Okay, so thank you for coming out to the Edmonton Python user group. It's cold, so thanks for making the trek out here. Special thanks to our speakers. If you would like to speak, even if you don't want to speak, please come up and tell me a talk and I'll schedule you in. It's getting kind of sparse. If you have a topic that you would like to learn about, feel free to come and tell me, and I'll see if I can find a speaker for that topic. Thank you to Torchbox for sponsoring tonight. That's the cue.
Hi, I'm Caleb. I'm from Torchbox. Those guys. We are a digital, we're a digital agency out of the UK. We're also the creators of Wagtail CMS, Python's biggest, most popular content management system. And we are looking for Python, Django, and Wagtail devs. So if you're looking for a remote gig and you write Python, Django, or Dev, come talk to me.
Yeah. So it's a really cool gig and very cool software that they make. Special thanks to Startup Edmonton for providing us with this nice space. We have a Pac-Man rule. If you are talking in a group, please leave one space open so that someone can join and complete the Pac-Man. I don't know why it's a Pac-Man. I guess it starts off as a Pac-Man. So we'll have two talks today. One is Pipenv versus Poetry, and that's by Eddie. And the other one is Intro to Git by Andrew. I know it said on the website Dan was going to be speaking, but no. So, we have a few events. There's Student DevCon 2020. It's March 7th. PyCon, which is in Pittsburgh, April 15th to the 23rd. Polyglot YAG, which is the April 4th. And YAGSEP, Capture the Flag, March 2nd. If you'd like to know more about Capture the Flag and YAGSEC, or like security, that guy. All right, the one flailing his arms. News, Django Security released a new patch, 3.3. This is for Postgres injection. It's kind of like when they do a join in Python, where you do .join and then you like add a bunch of like commas in between a list. They just had a SQL injection vulnerability that they just patched. So if you don't use that, then you're fine, but probably upgrade anyways. Pandas 1.0 came out. There's some differences. You can read about them yourself. Jobs. If you have any jobs, let us know, and we'll put it on this slide, like Torchbox. And yeah, if you want to know more about Torchbox, that guy. So there's a bunch of articles that were interesting, so I put them up here. Clean Code Python, which is a very good article or it's a Git repository. You can go there and read the README. It's actually pretty good, like pretty informative, has some good things to go by and learn. The Python tip is actually provided by that Clean Code Python. So then there's also Python not equals is not, comparing objects in Python. That's just the differences in the not equals and is not comparison. Then there's the 22 most used Python packages in the world, which is URL lib. That's number one. So just spoiled that for you. How I'm testing in 2020 is a good talk or good blog about how you can do testing in Python. Sets in Python. It's about sets in Python. It's a good name. So if you don't know about sets in Python, that's good because it's sets in Python. So type functional dependency injection in Python. If you want to get good with tests and you're like, oh, my code is hard to test. How can I write my code better so that I can test it? Then type functional dependency injection is a great way to inject mocks into your classes so that you can test them. Then there's configuring UWSGI for production deployment, which is a web server. So if you're doing Flask or Django, you can use UWSGI to serve your app. And then there's a blog post about Python and the much faster PyPy. And there's PyTracking, visual tracking library based on PyTorch. This is finding objects in images, but also tracking them through progressive other images, right? So like a video. Inline C, so you can write C in Python. So if you think that your code isn't that fast and you want to inline a bunch of C in order to make it faster, probably don't, because it's probably not the thing that's slow. But if you want, you can do that. And then there's Pandas Vet, which is a plugin for Flake 8 that checks Pandas code. So the Python tip. One, join the Edmonton Python Meetup Slack so that you can talk to people and ask questions. And the Python tip is functions should do one thing. So at the top we have a function, and this is email clients. It grabs a list of clients and then emails them. So I just used the word and there, so it does two things. So better would be to split it out. One, get the active clients, and then two, email the actual clients. And then we can make it Pythonic by using a list or a generator. So the active clients is a little bit different, and that's about it. So good, Pythonic. Good, Pythonic. Pythonic, next slide. On March 9th is our next meetup, and that is all. So let's welcome Eddie.
Hello! So today I'm going to talk about Pipenv versus poetry. Has anybody heard of either of these two things before? Put your hand up. All right, good. So I love Python. It's my favorite programming language, favorite programming environment. That being said, we definitely can find some faults in it. So what is, to you, the worst part of Python development? Pip. I like that. Anybody else got an opinion other than pip? Different virtual environments, that's good. So that's related, pip and virtual environments. Anybody else? I'm not going to discuss that. You are incorrect. All right, so has anybody used any of these packages, Python packages, like NumPy, adders, Django, pandas, Jinja? If you've used even one of these, put your hand up. Oh yeah, that's like most of the room. Okay, so one of the things I want to do all the time when I'm programming Python is I want to use packages downloaded from the internet, some global repository where all of the delicious Python packages are. Maybe not you, but I want to publish my own packages and share them with the world on this global repository. And if I have different projects going on in my system, I also want to have different package versions for each of my projects. So we had somebody say pip was bad, right? So if I want to install Django, is this the way I should do it? Like I just open up my terminal and do this? Is this good? I'm getting whispers of no. No, don't do this. Why? Because it installs for your entire machine, which is a problem. Let's say you have, you're trying out the latest Django, what is it, Django 3.03, but you also have some old project from years ago that was running on Django 1.7. If you have your packages installed globally, then either you need to uninstall Django and then reinstall the correct version when you're using different projects, or you just have to deal with one version, which could be incompatible with what you're doing. So that sucks. Also, when you're sharing your code with people, it's kind of awkward to tell people, oh, hey, I'm on this version. Because if you just do pip install Django, which version of Django? Could be 3.0, could be 2.2, could be anything, right? A solution to this is to use pip freeze. Who here has done pip freeze and then put in requirements.txt? All right. If you've looked at First of all, has anybody done that and then looked at requirements.txt? Do you recognize every single package in that list? No, you don't, right? So how do you know when something is a dependency that you actually care about, say pandas, and what is like a transitive dependency, a dependency of your dependencies, right? How do you know, like, are you depending on the certificate package? The problem with pip_freeze is it lists everything you have installed, which is not necessarily what you want. And that means everything you have installed for your all the projects on your computer. So, does anybody know who this man is? If anybody's watched Python, any kind of talks on Python? Okay, Raymond Hedinger. What's his catchphrase? Okay. No. Okay, we're going to do this. I'm going to smack the table, and you are all going to say there must be a better way, okay? There must be a better way. Thank you. And there is. Virtual environments. Now you don't have to pip install things globally because there are these things called virtual environments. So what is a virtual environment? Well, simply put, it's an exact copy, a clone of your Python installation that you can install packages just for that one installation. So typically what you need to do to set this up is, since the copy, the clone of your Python installation will have its own Python path, will have its own libraries, will have its own directories and things, you need to do some kind of magic with environment variables in order to quote unquote activate it. So you do something like this, source.venv/bin/activate. Has anybody done that? Does anybody know exactly what that does? Okay. This is a massive hack. It's really inelegant. Another thing, so I'm going to actually discuss some of the problems with this hack. Problems with virtual environments. So first of all, before you start a project, you got to remember to create a virtual end, which, let me tell you, I forgot to do that multiple times. The other thing is, where do you put the virtual environment? Do you put it in the same directory? Do you call it venv? Do you call it .venv? Do you put it in some like home folder thing? Where do you put it? I know if you have a space in your virtual end anywhere in your full path to your virtual end, it'll just stop working because the way that the Python activate thing works. Also, before you can use your virtual environment, you must remember to activate it. And then once that virtual environment is activated, then you can use pip to actually install all your good packages and stuff. Also, when you go on and deploy your app, if it's like a web server or things, you need to make sure that when you deploy that app, it's using the virtual environment and not using like the global version of Python or whatever. And that still doesn't get around the fact that you need to remember to save things to requirements.txt. You still have to do pip, freeze, and then pipe it or redirect it to requirements.txt. You still have to do all of that. Thank you. And there is. And it's called Pipenv. So Pipenv describes itself as Python dev workflow for humans. And the goal of it is to automate a lot of the tasks that would have otherwise been done manually with virtual environments. So for creating virtual environments, just hold on with me. All you do is type pipenv and then the version of Python you want. That creates a new virtual environment for the current folder. To activate it, you just type pipenv shell. No need to know where your virtual environment is. You just type pipenv shell and boom, you have an activated virtual environment. Installing packages, you just type, instead of pip install, you do pipenv install the package, and then it will figure out all of the versions and save it to a pipenv file. In order to run your app, it's just pipenv and then the name of the app. That works all the time. And then, instead of requirements.txt, which is this, like barely even a file format, there is an explicit file format for listing both your direct dependencies of your app and your development dependencies of your app. And this is pip file and the related pipfile.lock. And these things are updated automatically whenever you do pipenv install or pipenv upgrade or pipenv sync or any of those kind of things. So that means no more dealing with requirements.txt. Like, you can just forget about that file. Then there's Poetry. Poetry has very similar goals. It describes itself as Python packaging and dependency management made easy. So Poetry is kind of the same deal. Excuse the fact that my animations are weird. So creating virtual environments, you just do Poetry, new, and then the name of your project. And just like Pipenv, you do Poetry shell to activate the virtual environment, to install packages, Poetry add the package, Poetry run to run your things within the virtual environment. And instead of the pipenv file, instead of the pipenv file, you have the pyproject.toml file, which is, again, automatically updated whenever you install, upgrade, or sync your dependencies. And this is actually a Python pep. Like, in fact, there's like quite a number of different peps that involve the pyproject.toml. So it's like an official Python thing. It's not just a thing that Poetry invented out of thin air. So let's do a brief comparison of Pipenv versus Poetry. So Pipenv is really intended for specific application development. So I have a very specific application I have in mind. It's just going to work in this particular environment. So it kind of simplifies that project management, especially if you're working with a team. If you know where your application is going to be deployed, this is a good way to do it by using Pipenv. Whereas Poetry, why are my animations so weird? Poetry is intended a little bit more towards library authors, because for library authors, it's super, super, super easy to publish a package. You literally type Poetry publish, and then it goes up to PyPI. That being said, I still find Poetry useful for somebody working on an application. It really, I haven't seen anything that really detracts from using it to make applications like Django or Flask web apps. So now comes the opinion part. I'm not going to lie, the rest of this, I didn't put too much effort. I'm just going to tell you what I think. So take the rest with a grain of salt. You can ask me questions, you can argue with me, but these are my opinions. Pipenv, I've used it for a year, and it is so slow. Has anybody used Pipenv and just installed a single package? What is it doing? I don't know what it's doing. What is it thinking? It I upgraded one dependency, not even a new package, and it took forever. Like, part of that is hashing, but I'm not sure what exactly it's hashing. Like, is it hashing each file individually? What is it doing? I don't know what it's doing. Seriously, whenever I have to upgrade a package or install a new package with Pipenv, I just press enter and then leave and get coffee. Like, it takes that long. It's like a block to your workflow. So I don't like that very much. Also, I've had this thing where Pipenv just has a weird version resolution algorithm, and it's constantly failing to resolve dependencies. Here I am trying to install the black formatter. It turns out that Pipenv doesn't like it because all of the versions are alpha or like pre-release versions, and it says it installs the package, and then it says it fails to lock the package, and it's just unnecessarily annoying. Like, I have no idea. Like, I always have to remember, oh, and allow this to be a pre-release. This is just a minor annoyance, honestly. Pip and cons, the original maintainer. Whoo boy. So there was once this issue where somebody was like, hey, the Pipenv Python version, can you make it so that I can support a range of versions? Like, right now, it only supports a single version. And he made this really detailed post. Like, I'm cutting it off here. There's like an example and everything. And the original maintainer, who will go nameless, just replied, no. I think he's stopped maintaining Pipenv, but some of his decisions were like questionable, and they've kept those decisions. I think the new maintenance team is like better in terms of like just being social beings on the planet, but it definitely left its scar on the project. So, poetry cons. So when I've used Poetry, it just seems like it has a lot less features, it has a lot less going on, there's a whole lot less customization. Maybe for you, that's a pro. Maybe sometimes, you have a specific need, a specific niche that it won't satisfy for you. Another thing, if you are a library author, I don't know how many of you are, but it gets rid of setup.py, which is good. Setup.py is weird and terrible, but it's also, since it's just straight up a Python file, incredibly flexible. So when you're making a library, you need to put a setup.py so the library can figure out how to package it into a tarball, how to install on another computer, all that kind of stuff. Poetry does not allow you to customize that. That might be good, that might be bad. Also, I personally encountered a super niche bug, which I'm not going to talk about right now, but it involves this usage with Homebrew. So, my conclusion. There's my face. There's a thought bubble. I prefer Poetry. I've had a better, smoother experience with it. I don't mind the fact that it's missing a few features. Some of those features maybe I shouldn't have been using in the first place. However, if you've got a workflow that's already good for you, don't bother migrating to Poetry. It's not that great. If you're making a new project, definitely try Poetry out. I liked it, but it's not worth switching to if you already have something working. That said, there's tons of room for improvement in this space. This isn't like the be-all, end-all way of packaging, of dealing with packages, dealing with projects, that kind of stuff. Is that? Yeah. That being said, there's tons of work going into Poetry, into Pipenv, into pip tools, into a whole lot of things that have this specific use case in mind. And that's it. That's all I got. Please ask me questions. Yes.
I work with Stackstone, so I'm a DevOps engineer.
Sure.
I work with Stackstone a lot. So my role predominantly involves designing chat op applications.
Sorry?
Chat ops.
Okay.
So you can put like a command in Slack that.
Oh, sure, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That, you know the viewbot package?
Yeah.
So
GitHub viewbot.
With Stackstone to make it work.
Yeah, sure.
So are these compatible with Stackstone? Because I'm still creating requirements, I'm still doing all that.
I have absolutely no idea. I would try it. I need to know more about that use case to tell you yes or no. I'm assuming it can work.
Because I still create the requirements every time. So
Yeah.
you actually deploy to a folder, run the virtual environment, set up the virtual environment, and then the package is deployed.
Yeah.
But I have to create so right now I still do the requirements.txt a lot.
So yeah, this probably can replace all of your requirements.txt. And then in order to actually run your application, like it depends on how it's running.
Okay.
Because both Pipenv and Poetry, they stuff the virtual environment and like in a place you can find. It's just, it doesn't put it in the same directory. You have to go searching for the virtual environment.
Like even Stackstone has its own structure.
Yeah.
Where it puts the virtual environment.
Okay.
And it puts everything in.
Also, another thing I didn't mention about Poetry, if it finds an activated virtual environment, it'll just use it. It doesn't feel like it needs to own the virtual environment. Whereas Pipenv wants to manage the virtual environment completely. Like it wants to know where it is. It wants to install things exclusively to it. No, with Poetry, you can, if a virtual environment is currently activated, it'll just use it. No problem.
I'll have to try something.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, try it. Yes.
Are both of those or either of those on GitHub? Like, are those actually open source for community can develop?
Oh yeah, they're 100% open source. They're both on GitHub. I showed you this one is on Pipenv is on GitHub. You can see the GitHub issue, and the thread is locked with a bunch of thumbs downs. I like that. Yeah, but yeah, get them. They're on GitHub. Yeah.
Does Poetry have the same hash function like Pipenv? Make it extra secure, like, so files don't get changed?
Yeah, so Poetry does have locking. It does lock your dependencies, and it takes a lot less time than Pipenv. Like, seriously, what is Pipenv doing? I want to know.
Poetry re-download and rehash everything every single time? Because I know like in older versions of Pipenv that I don't know about now.
It re-downloads them?
Pipenv, I don't know about now.
Yeah.
Like I know that like back when I looked at it in like 2017, 18.
Sure.
Re-download and rehash every single dependency in the locking process.
That would explain why it takes so long. It still does?
That would explain it. Because I think like it sounds like Poetry maybe like tests the ones it already has.
Yeah, I honestly have no idea exactly how the locking mechanism works for either of the tools. I just know that Poetry is a lot faster.
Yeah.
Maybe it's less secure. So I don't see it as a security thing, the package hashing. I see it more as a deterministic thing. Like, I have the exact same packages as you. If I download this repository and I do Poetry sync or Poetry install, I forget which one it is, I will get the exact same thing you have, which is useful if you want people to be on the same page with things, right? The security thing, I can't speak to that, really. Yeah.
Any thoughts on just using a bigger hammer and just using like a container engine to say, no, all the dependencies, everything that's installed, it's all in a container and it's totally separated out from the rest of the world?
I do not personally do that, but someone who I really would like to do a talk is Aaron Young. Because of the Docker stuff.
Oh, the Docker stuff.
Yeah, I would really like to see you do a talk on that, because that's something out of my
it's interesting. I'll probably only take a minute, but like if you were to do all of your development work inside of a Docker container, then the need for things like pip and Poetry tend to kind of fall by the wayside, because you can actually just use pip install and the requirements.txt inside of a Docker container. In my experience, I've used Pipenv if I'm outside of a Docker container. If I'm inside of a Docker container, I'll just use regular pip, because inside of that container, easy to visualize as a virtual machine. You can keep it separate from your real machine's file system and manage everything internally inside of that container without these sorts of tools. These tools, to me, are a way to segregate your projects that all sit on one host machine effectively. So that's the way I approach what tools I want to use. So.
Yeah. So yeah, you could do that too. I personally don't have too much experience with that. Yes.
I work on multiple projects, I'll toggle between different ones.
Yeah.
One of the features I thought this had was it would automatically activate the virtual environment on the project you're CD'd into.
I'm sure you could do some shell magic to do that for you.
Yes,
I would not. Because for both Pipenv and Poetry, and again, Pipenv tends to be slower, but activating a virtual environment takes some time. So just CD, doing a CD into the directory will take some time for it to actually activate. That being said, I tend to, my workflow is go into the directory, and usually Poetry shell, Pipenv shell, I tend to do that. I'm sure you could find a way using your favorite shell to, when I CD into this directory and I find a pyproject.toml, or if I a pip file, then activate the virtual env. I'm sure you could do that. I've had that set up before with PyEnv, but I don't want to discuss PyEnv.
This still it's still built on top of the ENV, right? It's got
Pipenv knows of the existence of PyEnv. It's kind of buggy in my experience. I've had things installed with PyEnv, and then pipenv would be like, hey, you don't have Python 3.8 installed. Would you like me to install it with PyEnv? I'm like, oh yeah, sure, go do it. And it installs it. And then it's like, oh, well, I guess I couldn't find Python 3.8 on your path. And it's like, it's there on my path. I don't know what you're talking about. I can do Python 3.8. It's there. Like, maybe it's a misconfiguration on my part, but I don't know. It hasn't been smooth for me. Yeah.
So can you go over one or more of the questionable design things you found in Pipenv?
This is one, the Python version thing. Yeah, well, actually, okay, I get it. If you just want to make applications, then you just want to use one version of Python, then it makes sense that you can only set this to a single Python version. That's weird. The other thing is when you install something, instead of using like an npm style, like install Django at version 2. Blah, 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 up to, but not including 3, it decides install Django, any version of Django, just any of them by default. And somebody's like, could you change that so that it installs specific versions? And again, the reply is no. I can't really think of any others, but there are other things where it's like, why did you do it this way? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How does this compare to built-in VM package?
Oh, well, this is just applies a little bit of automation to that. So that goes back to way back over here. Virtual environments, you have to remember how to do all these steps, and you have to remember to put things in requirements.txt and all that kind of stuff. It just, it's not too bad, but it could definitely be a little bit smoother. And yeah, Pipenv, Poetry, they make managing virtual environments just a little bit smoother. Yeah. Yeah.
I should also mention, I think the last update to Pipenv was in 2018.
They're not updating Pipenv? I did not know that. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie.
Hi everyone, so today I'm going to talk to you about Git. I'm going to talk a bit about intro to version control with Git specifically, and then a bit deeper into how some of the hashes work, and there will actually be a little bit of Python code. So yeah, first of all, who uses version control? And who already knows how to use Git? Okay, most people, but not everyone. All right. So version control is a system for storing source code, and every code change is a distinct entity called a commit. And every commit has an attached record of who made the change, when they made it, and why they said they made the change. So here's an example to make that clear. So at some point, someone made this change to Python, the Python source code, and we've got an author, we have a date. They wrote down what it was. This BPO thing is a link to, that's a bug number, so you can find more details about why they made this change. And then this is Git showing, okay, the actual change is they changed this equals to a less than or equal to. And so the usefulness of having all of this is instead of a big pile of source code and you don't really know what changed when or who wrote what, you get all these different things that you can do with the source code instead. So a diff shows you what's changed. So this is the diff showing, oh, we just changed this equals to a less than or equal to. You get backups and undo. You can go back to a known good state if you've made some changes to a program and now it starts crashing. Well, you can just go back to the old version until you have a chance to figure out what went wrong. You got history. So if you've got some code that you spent a lot of time working on and you've never quite got it working, if it's in the version control system, you can just safely delete it knowing you can get it back if you ever need to, but you don't need to keep it in there all commented out and so on. Context. You can explain design decisions, you can link to bug reports, and even if someone is absolutely terrible and just doesn't put anything in the commit line and it doesn't say anything at all what the change is, at least it has their name on them so you can go and ask them what happened. So merges are wonderful if someone else is working on the code and you're working on the code. Most of the time, the version control system can just munge everything together and hopefully everything all works. And it's much better than overwriting where it's just, oh, well, they made a change after you and they didn't load your changes first, so it's just gone. And synchronization. This is less useful now that we all generally have fast internet, but the benefit of this is if you make a small change to a large program, you only have to transmit that small change instead of the entire program. So sometimes Git repositories get up into being several gigabytes, and it's really nice that you only have to pull small changes at a time. And there's something cool called bisection. Who knows what binary search is? Okay, so this is a really cool thing in Git. It's called git bisect. If your program, if you knew it worked like a year ago and no one's tried this feature since and now you know it doesn't work, if there's some way that you can write a script or test by hand, like, hey, does this work or not? Version control tools can actually let you just do a binary search to find exactly where they broke, which is really handy sometimes. And so in short, there are tons of benefits. Is it worth the effort? So it's indispensable when working with others just for the automatic merges. Otherwise, just you get complete chaos. So if you're ever working with other people, you need version control for source code. And arguably, even if the only people working on this are past you and future you and present you, like, you're still going to get chaos if you're not tracking what's happening. And just being able to say, hey, like, what did I change from 10 minutes ago when this seemed to work? And so for this talk, hopefully is there anyone unconvinced of the value of version control? All right. Okay, so this talk I'm going to cover the basics of getting started with Git, and I'm reusing an old talk, and in the old talk there was an exercise at the end for people who'd never done a pull request. If you want to do that, that's great, but I'm going to mostly just skim past that part. All right, so GitHub is a nice web view of version control. So this is showing the Python repository, that same commit I showed earlier. So I can read this because I've been looking at things like that in my terminal all day for many, many years, but it's a lot to take in for a newcomer. And also, so GitHub gives you just a nice view of that. Like, there's all sorts of wonderful things about web interfaces. I'm not going to go into that too much detail on that talk, but then here's the nice colored view, and it's nicely highlighted. Hey, it's just that change of there. And there are some little links. You can see, oh, this is in version 3.70 that this change went in. And there's all sorts of things you can click. So it's wonderful. And then the history that I talked about earlier, that also shows up on the web. So here, if you look at that specific file in the Python source code, it's showing, hey, this line got changed in this, and so you can click through. And so all of this is really nice if you're trying to understand, hey, like, did this code ever work? Did this get changed? Like, what's going on? Unfortunately, to use GitHub, you have to use Git. Git is hard to use. So it's an open source version control system originally written by the guy who invented Linux to store the Linux source code. The target audience is C programmers who work on the Linux kernel. So the target audience for your tool. So this is a tool written by kernel hackers for other kernel hackers, very comfortable working in C inside a kernel. So that's why it's just, there's a lot of stuff there. It's definitely tricky. It can get really complicated really quickly. Personally, I used to use Mercurial. It's written in Python. It's a lot friendlier. Who here has even heard of Mercurial? Okay, more people than I expected. So for a while, it seemed like there was a competition between Git and Mercurial. And now there's no competition. So there's still people working on it, but I don't think anyone's really using it. And yeah, so if you want to speculate on, if you want to contribute your own speculations on why Git won, we can do that at the end. So there is an O'Reilly book called Version Control with Git. and it covers a lot of stuff. And so in the more advanced parts of this talk, I'm going to be using things I basically learned from that. So I use Mercurial. I was a happy Mercurial user. And then at some point I got a job and everyone else was using Git, and I didn't want to, well, I wanted to be able to do my job, so I had to learn this. So I worked through this book. It took a while, but I think it took a month or two of like working the evenings. Yes?
There's actually a pro Git book as well.
Okay.
On the Git webpage.
Okay.
That's also, I think it's simple enough.
Okay. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, there are lots of great resources for learning it. It's just, I'm just telling you, this is hard. When I show you the advanced stuff, it's not like I just picked that up right away. Like, it literally took a few months of work to get there. Not working on it full time, but it took a lot of work. So when you're getting started with Git, you need a Git config file, and it usually just has your first name and it just has your name and your email. But I'm going to tell you about two other options I personally find indispensable. So one is verbose commit view. And what this will do is when you're checking in your code, it will actually show you what changes are being committed. I'll give an example later. And the other, when we get to merges, is this conflict style equals diff3. And that probably means nothing right now, but without this, it's really hard. I find it really hard to do any merges. So I'll just explain more about this later. But so the walkthrough, to create a Git repository for your source code, you type git init, and you get a message saying initialize an empty Git repository. So now if you create a file and say git status, it will show untracked files, in this case foo. And then if you add it, so the command is git add to say add this file to the repository, and then the git status will show there's a new file, and then you commit it. And then it pops open a text editor, and you can give a comment or not. You probably should add a comment, but if it's blank, at least your name's attached. And so that verbose commit thing that I showed earlier, that shows up right here. And so that's when you're committing something, it shows here are the actual changes. So again, the walkthrough is git init, create a file, add it, commit it. And then when you log it, run the git log command, it shows all this information that we saw at the beginning. So that's how you make a commit. And then you can share that, you can merge that, you can run by sections on that. So the nice thing about GitHub is it makes it really easy to share your code with other people. So normally if I'm working on code for myself, I just have it on my laptop, but say I want to work with someone else and they want access to it, then you can go into the settings for a repository, you can go to collaborators, you can type in someone's name, and you can give them access to read and write from your repository. It's really handy for collaborating. And so you can both make changes and then push them up to the GitHub server and then pull them onto your laptop for work. So the merge conflict part is where it gets, merge conflicts sometimes happen. So this is who's run into a merge conflict and didn't really know what to do. Okay, a couple people. So the config setting I showed earlier, it gives this more helpful thing. So maybe it doesn't seem that helpful, but so this is showing, okay, originally this file just said hello in this part. And somewhere it was changed from hello to goodbye, and somewhere else it was changed from hello to hello there. So if these were different changes on different lines, if there had been hellos in different parts of the file that had been changed in different ways, Git would just merge them together automatically. But here, there have been different people changing the same line, and Git can't do that automatically. So someone has to go in there and manually decide what to do here. And in this case, you can say goodbye there. It seems like a reasonable merge of the two things. And then to resolve the conflict, it's with git add and then commit. So, all right, so working with strangers. The other one was titled Working with Friends, and that's where someone can just give you access to their repository and trust you to push stuff back and forward. But say I want to make a change to Pipenv. Well, no one in Pipenv knows who I am. They're not just going to let me change all the code however I want. But I can click the fork button. I can get my own copy of Pipenv. I can make changes to that. And then I can send what's called a pull request, which originally evolved from the idea of you're requesting that someone else pull your changes into their repository. So if you click compare, then you'll get a web view showing what the difference is. And yeah, I really should have had access to GitHub. Does anyone want me to log into GitHub and demonstrate this? Okay. This is the repository for this presentation. So the source code for the presentation is right here. And so if we look at the history on this, or if I do the blame, you'll see that pretty much everything here, this is an old talk. I wrote everything here 2 years ago, but an hour ago I changed the date when I was asked to fill in. And so let's see here. So there's a file here called attendees. And so GitHub's made it a little bit easier on the web interface. So you can click this, you can click this edit button. And okay if I send a pull request? Yeah. So in this case, there's a little web editor, and you can say propose file change. And so that all right, so that's created a change, and then the maintainer, when I get back to a computer that has my password saved, I will get an approve button, and it will be merged in. And so if you wanted to make that change locally, so this has now created a fork, I believe. All right. And so using Git, I can say git clone the URL from the GitHub interface, and then my change is going to be in here already. And oh no, it isn't. Okay. I think it's going to go in. I think. Okay. Who's puzzled and is confident that I might be able to unpuzzle them? Okay. All right. So let me try that again. So using that editor has actually created a different branch. So if we go back to that pull request. All right, so GitHub is showing here that data-get, which is Andrew, wants to merge one commit into the PyYYC repository from data-get patch 1. So GitHub behind the scenes has created something called a branch. For 95% of what you're doing, you can safely, completely ignore branches. But GitHub has made, although GitHub makes a lot of things with Git easier by adding a branch in here, in this case, it's made things a little trickier. So to actually see Andrew's change, I have to say, all right, so there's a command git branch to list branches, -a for all and -r for remote. I don't know if I actually need both of those. I probably do. No, I just need, okay, so these are the remote branches. And now if I say checkout origin/patch1, then it gives me a warning telling me I've done something wrong and I'm now in detached head state, which is just the sort of thing that, which is the reason why to really understand this, you probably need to like work through a book or Google a lot of things. But in this case, say Andrew changes his mind. Oh, so Andrew's going to add his last name. And so this is going to give the error because, oh no, it's fine. Add last initial. And then I'm going to add the key, but then, yeah, all right. So all right. If you're sort of following along and have questions, just say so. if my point was to convince you that Git is complicated, hopefully I'm achieving that. So to actually push a change to the web from the fork, so I had to create something called an SSH key, and that's actually really easy. I just ran SSH keygen, and I just hit enter a bunch of times, accepting all the defaults. Now, I need to know what the public key is. So that ends up in a folder called /.ssh, and so cat the pub file. And then I can copy that. And then in the web interface, there's, oh, it's actually over here. So under the user, there's your profile.
It's actually under settings.
All right, it's actually under settings. And you have two-factor on, right? Okay, it might need that to add it. Okay, so I'm going to add a key. Oh, okay, so that just worked. So now, so one handy command is git remote-v. Sorry, I don't even know where the, so git remote-v is showing which paths Git knows about. And in this case, we cloned the repository using HTTPS. And HTTPS doesn't have a very good way of authenticating you. So if you want to push the changes, you need to type in your password again. And so we have to switch this over to SSH. And that is done by going back to the repository. And under this clone thing saying use SSH to get the SSH URL. And then there's a magic file called .git/config in the repository. And we're just changing the URL. So now if I say get push origin, and then I have to say patch 1 this time. I think it's because I'm in detached head state. So okay. All right. So now I can push and origin patch 1. Yes. There, success. And so if I go back to the pull requests, if I go look at the pull request, this now shows the second commit with the add last initial. So the takeaways here, Git is complicated enough that even someone who's quite experienced with it, if they're using a laptop they don't normally use, it can take them a while to get anything done. So just Google for the error messages, like look up how to do it, you'll get through it, and you can update a pull request by pushing more changes to that branch. So does anyone have any questions at this point on the basics of the pull request?
So many.
Okay. Yeah.
I thought you were going to start asking them.
Okay. I'm happy to answer, but yeah. So that's how you send a pull request, and then sometimes the person will just respond no and block you. Sometimes they'll swear at you. Sometimes they'll say, thank you so much for doing this. That was a lot of work to fix this. I'm so happy anyone uses my software. It's just, you don't really know. Just try not to take it personally. If anyone has better coping strategies, please suggest them. So getting out of trouble, Git is complicated. It's easy to mess up. People sometimes worry that they're going to lose stuff. There are ways to lose stuff in Git. So just one of the nice things about Git, it's really fast and easy to make commits. If you're about to do anything and you don't know exactly how it'll go, just commit it. few people will complain if you have a bunch of extra commits saying checkpoint, 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 not really sure what's going on, I don't know what's happening. And there are ways to clean that all up, but just commit everything. If you've been doing checkouts and branches and resets and so on, and all of a sudden you seem to have like lost a bunch of code, there's something you need to know about called the git ref log. So you type git ref log, and then it's this magic record Git keeps of everything you do. And so say I type something, so I'm on, okay, so I'm going to switch to the master branch, and then I'm going to delete this other branch. And it says it's not fully merged, are you sure you want to do it? And let's say I'm tired or not, I'm just going to intentionally ignore that, and then I'm going to run the wrong command to try to get back to where I was. And now if I look at this, oh gosh, all it is are like the changes from earlier. Everything I did is gone. Where the heck did it go? What are my branches? Well, there's the remote one, but it's missing some of the stuff. And like, oh my gosh, where did my code go? Just run git ref log. And it has the history of all the stuff you've done. There's even a way to get it to show timestamps in here. So this is showing, it's a little hard to read, but it's, okay, so there was a clone, there was a checkout, there was a commit, there was a checkout, there was a checkout, and there was a reset. So we can go back and say, okay, I want to go back to add last initial. So that's this one, and here's the commit hash. So in this case, I can just reset back to that, and I got everything back. Yes?
How far back does that go? Is it infinite or is it
I want to, if I had to guess, I would say it was 30 days, but it's configurable.
Oh, so it's a ref log.
Yeah.
It's not like a line amount then?
It's not a, pardon?
Line amount or anything like that?
No, I don't think so. I believe it's 30 days, but yes?
Is git ref log the thing that's affected by git GC?
Yes.
I believe so.
Okay. Git GC is the thing that like
Okay. Yeah.
gets rid of all the abandoned
Yeah.
reps.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think the default on that is 30 days.
Okay.
But so gets complicated, you can screw it up, but as long as you committed it, you can get it back as long as you go look in the ref log. So that was that, and yeah, so that was just the tip. From the ref log, you get the commit hash. So now the actual Python part. So some version control systems, if anyone ever used Subversion, it would have sequential version numbers and so on, but gets distributed and allows offline commits. I can make a bunch of commits here, Aaron can make a bunch of commits there, we can all push them up, and so there's no way to give a clear total ordering. So you get these crazy version numbers like 61, C1, F88999, 7415, F5, FEAE, 711, 911. All right, what the heck is that? So there's, okay, so this version number, so there's a command called git catfile-p, which will show what is the internal git thing for something. I have a diagram coming up that'll make this clear. So this commit 61 blah blah in text form is this. So it says tree and then another hash and then the author and the committer and there's a timestamp and the subject. And so this tree is another thing, and so if I click on that, then it shows, okay, that's a different hash, and then foo, and it says blob, and then it has some file permissions. So, and then if we cat that, then we just have hi. So this is a repository where if we have a file called foo that contains the string hi, and we have a hash of hi, and then we put that hash into this tree structure, and we hash that, and then we put that into this commit, and we hash that. So here's the diagram. So these are blobs. So it's just a string of text or some binary, and we get a hash for the content, and that's a blob. Then there are these things called trees, which map file names to blobs. So this tree says, okay, at test.txt, I have the text version 1. And then a commit points to 1 or more parents, actually 0 or more parents, and a tree. So then the cat file -p, p is for pretty. So if you want to see the raw thing, it's in binary. So if you just run git cat file commit head, then it's this text format where it says tree and it's the hash, and then I guess it's just a new line. So that's not too bad. Oh, that is actually just the text format. But then for the tree, oh yeah, there might be, I don't remember, there might be a, I don't know how the length is encoded in here, but at the end of the day, you have this. So here's some Python code. So if we say Andrew with the email andrew@example.org makes a commit at this timestamp, then we hash the blob. So we hash, okay, we have the binary string blob followed by the string hi. So we take the hash of that, and then we take the binary string tree and we add this information, and that's what the hash digest. Okay, yes, there's a null byte in there. And then if we put it in this format and hash everything, then we get the same thing back. So hash trees commits. And so the whole point of that hashing thing is supposed to be for security purposes, so that when Linus Torvalds says, hey, here's the new version of Linux, the hash for version 5.2 is this. That's verified by going all the way back to the first commit. That can be verified by going all the way back to the first commit for each. The hash of every text file and the hash of every directory and file name and the hash of every commit message all builds up into that, so that it's a, the hash is supposed to be a secure signature of the entire history of the source code tree, which is pretty cool. However, they used SHA-1 when they were building this, and for people who know about hash codes, SHA-1 is no longer considered a safe hash because people have found ways to make new things with the same hash. So Git has vague plans to move to new hashes, and I don't know exactly what's going to happen there, but for now, in the Git source code, there are detectors for the known instances where people have broken SHA-1, and it will just give you an error if it detects any of the known attacks. But at some point that will be moving, but that's, if you ever wondered where the commit hashes came from, this is where it was. It's complicated, and if anyone wants to send a pull request to this, I will approve it, and if you've always wanted to do a pull request, you can go ahead and get that. So thanks a lot, and any questions at this point?
So these repositories, like is GitHub a commercial enterprise? Do you have to pay? I download Git to my own server?
So Git is a free open source command line program. So that's the Git command with the okay. So this is GitHub with the shiny interface, and it's owned by Microsoft, and Microsoft paid like $9 billion or something for it. And they have plans to make that $9 billion back many times over. So they have, they try to, like, they give it away for free to students and hobbyists and so on, with the intent of charging a lot of money to businesses who want to use it and have private source code. So that's the Microsoft part of it. And then the actual command line tool is just a free open source thing made by hackers, made by kernel hackers.
So what are commercial, like what are professional programmers doing? Are they all on GitHub?
So,
yeah.
So for professionals, so they use, there's GitHub Enterprise, which is a virtual like VM image that you just deploy on an ESX host. There's Bitbucket, there's GitLab. Classes is mostly towards Bitbucket or like GitHub Enterprise.
Yeah. So the Git tool assumes you're very familiar with the command line, you're willing to go and read the C source code occasionally to figure out how things work, that it's easy for you to set up a web server and write scripts to share stuff. And then there are a whole bunch of commercial offerings for all the managers who for some reason want their devs working on the product instead of hacking on Git stuff. So, yes.
Have you used any of the GUIs like Git and Kraken? Or playing with Git Kraken, it's quite good if you're new to it and just need that visual kind of hand-holding.
Okay.
There's source tree also for the problem class.
I find that the GUI tools are kind of limiting,
Yeah.
if you want to do stuff, you eventually have to get it done online. So it's just
It creates such a dependency early on that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
There's-
So like,
yeah.
for beginners, my advice would be like just get into the habit of committing everything to like GitHub and push. Commit to Git and push to GitHub, and like when you type text, push to GitHub. And then for me, I find it really helpful because I'm working on my laptop, but then I get to work and I want to do continue what I was doing, so I was like commit and push. And once you get into the habit, then you start to get used to all of the command lines, syntax.
The one like GUI thing that I find is useful sometimes is stuff that visualizes branches.
Yeah.
I know that I think GitHub does that natively.
You
like-
can do some stuff on your terminal to visualize that as well.
Yeah. Or like if you use Sublime Text, I think Sublime Text merge.
Sometimes that Atom does that too.
Yeah.
Atom does that.
And I think there's a VS Code extension.
There are tools and there's Bitbucket plugins that do that.
And the other thing I'd point out is GitHub has an API that's quite comprehensive. So at a previous job, I was sending a lot of commits all the time, and so I had a script that would look in the current directory, it would look at the files, figure out what repository I was on, it would create the commit, it would send it up to GitHub, it would open the pull request, and then it would I think it would even pop it open in my browser, I don't remember, but like a lot of this stuff is scriptable. And so this some of it, think of it as a kernel. If you're often typing the same command over and over, performing the same steps, just write a script to do it for you. Yes?
So when are you going to give a talk on like CI mechanics?
Well, I think I have one on my laptop somewhere. If no one else steps up, you'll have to put up with me next month too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.